I work as a nurse, and after a particularly long shift at the hospital, I was finally heading home. It was close to midnight, and the roads were eerily quiet. My GPS was guiding me since I was too tired to rely on memory, and I wasn't in the mood to argue with it. It told me to take a right turn onto a narrow dirt road I didn't recognize, but I figured it was probably just a shortcut. The road was pitch black, with no streetlights, and my car's headlights barely cut through the suffocating darkness. Trees on either side of the road seemed to close in as if the night itself was swallowing me whole. I felt uneasy, but I told myself it was just my imagination. The GPS said I only had 3 more miles to go before I'd hit the main road again. 3 miles. I could handle that. I had barely gone half a mile when I heard it. A loud pop followed by the unmistakable thud of a flat tire. My heart sank. Of course, this would happen now, I muttered under my breath, pulling over to the side of the road. I grabbed my phone, hoping to call roadside assistance, but naturally, there was no signal. Just my luck. The night was deathly silent except for the faint rustling of leaves. I stayed in the car, gripping my phone like a lifeline, when something caught my eye in the rearview mirror. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I saw it again, a shadow, moving in the distance behind my car. I froze, my mind racing. It could be a deer, I told myself, or maybe another driver. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. As the figure came closer, the faint outline of a man became clear. He was tall, wearing dark clothes, and holding something in his hand. A crowbar. Panic set in. I instinctively locked all the doors and turned off the interior lights, trying to make myself invisible. He stopped about 10 feet away from my car, just standing there, staring. The way he lingered in the shadows, barely illuminated by my brake lights, sent chills down my spine. "Go away," I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. He didn't move. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it might burst. Suddenly, he started walking toward the driver's side door, slowly, deliberately. My hands fumbled to start the car, but in my panic, I accidentally turned on the wipers instead. I cursed under my breath and tried again. The engine roared to life, but I didn't move. I couldn't. The man was now right next to my window, his face still obscured by the shadows. He raised the crowbar and tapped it lightly against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. My whole body shook. "What do you want?" I screamed, finally finding my voice. He didn't answer. He just smiled, a cold, crooked smile that made my skin crawl. I did the only thing I could think of. I turned on the high beams and leaned on the horn. The sudden burst of light and sound startled him, and he stumbled back, shielding his eyes. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. Throwing the car into drive, I slammed on the gas. Flat tire beat end. The car wobbled and groaned as I sped down the dirt road, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw him standing in the middle of the road, watching me, the crowbar hanging loosely at his side. When I finally reached the main road, I didn't stop driving until I was in the parking lot of a gas station. I parked under the fluorescent lights, my hand still gripping the steering wheel, unable to let go. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I felt tears streaming down my face. An older man who worked at the gas station noticed me and came over to check if I was okay. I told him about the man and the dirt road. His expression darkened. "That road," he said, shaking his head. "That's a bad spot. Thieves wait there for lone drivers. They'll flatten tires with spikes or debris and rob whoever stops. You're lucky you got out of there." Lucky. That word stuck with me. If my car door hadn't been locked or if I had hesitated a moment longer, I didn't want to think about it. The drive home was a blur, and even when I finally crawled into bed, sleep didn't come easily. The man's smile haunted me every time I closed my eyes. The next morning, I reported the incident to the police. They said they'd patrol the area, but their tone told me they'd heard this story before. It was just another case for them. But for me, it was a nightmare I wouldn't soon forget. The moral of this story: never trust your GPS blindly, especially at night. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, lock your doors, stay in your car, and be ready to fight for your life. You never know who, or what, might be waiting for you in the dark. I'll never forget that night. It was a Thursday, sometime around 10:30 p.m., and I was driving home after a long day at work. I was exhausted, and the stretch of rural road I took every night was darker and quieter than usual. The only sounds were the steady hum of my car engine and the faint crunch of gravel under my tires. The first time I noticed the truck, I thought nothing of it. It pulled onto the road behind me from a side street. At first, it kept its distance, but as I continued driving, I realized it was getting closer, too close. Its headlights filled my rearview mirror, so bright they made it hard to see. I figured the driver just wanted to pass, so I eased over slightly to let them go. But they didn't pass. Instead, they stayed right behind me, practically kissing my bumper. My heart rate started to pick up. I tapped my brakes lightly, hoping they'd back off, but instead, they flashed their high beams, once, then twice. Each flash lit up the interior of my car like a lightning strike. I told myself not to panic. Maybe it was just some jerk messing around. Still, I sped up slightly, trying to put some distance between us. The truck matched my speed instantly. No matter how fast I went, it stayed glued to me, those blinding high beams burning into my skull. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, and I could feel the sweat building on my palms. Every time I glanced in the mirror, the truck loomed closer, almost as if it was trying to push me off the road. My mind started racing. Was this some random idiot, or was it something worse? I decided to turn onto a smaller side road, hoping to lose them. The tires squealed as I made the sharp turn, but when I glanced back, the truck followed. They weren't just behind me anymore. They were chasing me. Adrenaline surged through me. My breathing grew shallow as I turned down another road, then another. I was winding through back roads I barely recognized, trying to shake the sky. Each turn seemed to lead me deeper into the middle of nowhere, and the truck never wavered. The high beams kept flashing, casting shadows that danced on the trees like ghosts. That's when the real fears set in. What if I ran out of gas? What if I hit a dead end? What if, God forbid, I crashed? I didn't have cell service out here, and even if I did, how could I explain this? Hi, 911. Some psycho in a truck is tailgating me. They'd probably tell me to drive to the nearest police station, but that wasn't an option. Not out here. Then, up ahead, I saw it. The faint neon glow of a diner sign. Relief flooded through me. It was one of those old 24-hour spots you'd only find in the middle of nowhere. I didn't think twice. I floored it, pulling into the parking lot and skidding to a stop in front of the building. The truck zoomed past the entrance, and for a split second, I thought it was over. But then it slowed. My stomach dropped as I watched it circle back, parking just outside the lot's entrance. The engine idled loudly, a low, menacing growl in the quiet night. I bolted inside the diner. The place was nearly empty except for an older waitress behind the counter and a lone guy in a corner booth. I must have looked insane because the waitress immediately asked, "You okay?" There's someone following me," I stammered, glancing over my shoulder. The truck's headlights were still aimed at the building, glaring through the diner's windows. The waitress didn't ask questions. She picked up the phone and dialed 911 while the man in the booth got up, muttering something about getting his shotgun from his truck. I stayed near the counter, shaking, my eyes glued to the entrance. Minutes felt like hours. The truck didn't move, and neither did I. Then, finally, the distant wail of police sirens cut through the night. The truck's engine roared to life, and it sped off just as 2 squad cars pulled into the lot. The officers took my statement and promised to look for the truck. About half an hour later, one of them came back with news that chilled me to the bone. They'd found the truck abandoned on another side road. The driver was nowhere to be seen, but a quick search of the vehicle revealed something horrifying. Duct tape, rope, and a hunting knife tucked under the passenger seat. Apparently, the truck's owner had a record, a long one. Assault, stalking, even a few attempted kidnappings. The officer told me I was lucky. That didn't make me feel better. I couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't spotted the diner when I did. That night changed me. I don't drive those back roads anymore, no matter how late I'm working. And if someone's tailing me, I don't try to lose them. I head straight for somewhere safe. The moral: trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Because out there, in the dark, you never really know who's following you or why. It was close to midnight, and I was heading home after a long day at work. The highway was completely empty, the kind of eerie quiet that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. The glow of my headlights stretched far ahead, illuminating the endless ribbon of asphalt and nothing else. I liked driving late at night. Until that night. About 20 minutes into the drive, I saw her. A woman, maybe in her late 20s, standing beside an old sedan on the shoulder of the road. She was waving frantically, her face illuminated by my headlights. Her car hood was popped open, steam rising into the cold night air. I slowed down, debating whether to stop. My gut told me not to, but she looked desperate, alone, helpless. I pulled over a few feet ahead of her and rolled down my window. She jogged up to my car, smiling nervously. Her makeup was slightly smudged and she was clutching the phone. "Thank you for stopping," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "My phone's dead, and I can't get my car started. Can I use your phone to call for help?" I hesitated, glancing at her car. Something felt off. The hood was open, but her engine didn't make the sputtering noises you'd expect from a broken-down vehicle. And her smile, it wasn't one of relief. It was forced, like she was trying too hard to seem harmless. I handed her my phone, keeping my engine running just in case. She stepped back toward her car, pretending to dial a number, and that's when I saw them. 2 figures emerging from the bushes about 20 feet behind her car. They were moving quickly, trying to stay low. My heart dropped. Adrenaline kicked in. I shouted, "Hey, what's going on?" The woman froze, her expression twisting into something that still haunts me, a mix of anger and panic. She wasn't desperate. She wasn't helpless. She was part of it. The 2 men broke into a sprint, heading straight for me. I didn't think. I just reacted. I slammed my car into drive and floored it, nearly swiping the woman as I sped off. In my rearview mirror, I saw her drop my phone and yell something at the men. I didn't stop until I reached the next gas station. Hands shaking, I told the attendant what had happened and called the police. When they arrived, I explained everything. One of the officers nodded grimly. "You did the right thing. We've had reports of setups like this. They lure people in, then rob them, or worse." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her face, that fake smile, and the realization that I had almost fallen into their trap. The moral: trust your gut. No good deed is worth your life. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Sometimes, the people who look like they need help are the ones you should fear the most.